Hello and welcome to Hot Issues, the program which is brought to you by courtesy of Gassam Cement, the nation's builder. Today we are taking a look at political parties, and we are asking the question whether they should be funded by the state. Why should they be funded or not by the state? Does the state have the resources to fund political parties? What is all this debate about? Welcome to Hot Issues. Hello and welcome back to Hot Issues. And as I indicated before, today we are delving into the debate about the state funding of political parties. Why should the state fund political parties? Can the political parties raise their own resources? Are there any difficulties with state funding of political parties? What is it all about? How does it enhance our democracy? How does it devalue our democracy? And we are particularly privileged to have with us in the studio a gentleman who is quite prepared to discuss these issues. We want to welcome to the studio Mr. Joe Winful, who is a former senior partner of KPMG and is also executive chairman of the civil society organization platform. So you're welcome to the studio.
Thank you.
Have you been doing any work on the state funding of political parties?
Actually, we just had a forum that was 2 days ago, and it was on initiating a national discussion or conversation on political party financing, which includes the funding aspect of it. So we call it financing because it starts from right down from funding up to accounting for what has been collected, proper returns, sources of where the fundings are coming from, because you normally have a combination of both, state and maybe private sector or individuals and the rest. So we've started the national conversation, and we started that with a forum. We have tried to identify what we call the advisory council members who will be guiding this project, and then we are going to have a project team made up of representatives from the stakeholders, which includes political parties themselves. And they will be going around the country to try and collect data, information on the general thinking of this and the way forward. Because we believe it's a very pertinent issue, which we have all kept quiet about, although it's been raised a few times. And we think it should really be raised to at the national level, so that we know where we're going.
So who is raising this issue? Who is raising this issue? Who thinks that is a very pertinent issue?
Actually, it's an initiative of FAT Africa, of which I'm the executive chairman. And FAT Africa actually is what we refer to as Financial Accountability and Transparency Africa. This is a civil society group that was formed by, retired senior partners of the major firms and the politicians, because we thought, instead of playing golf in our retirement, let's give back to society. And the way we can give back is not by signing checks, but really sharing our experiences. I mean, we have a combined experience of almost 100 years, so we think it's going to be beneficial to the nation and the people of Ghana if we were to share our experiences in this area. So really we've been involved with examining state institutions and identifying the financial management challenges that they have, so that they can address them in order to move our financial management forward. You've been listening to the Public Accounts Committee and the rest of it, and I don't think you've been enjoying it. So that is what FAT Africa basically is set up to do.
What other state organizations have you examined? I mean, in terms of raising funds for them, in terms of making them stable, financially stable, and so on?
Oh, we've had a look at the financial report of SNIT. We've had that of VRA. We get them analyzed by other accountants, and then we look at what is beyond. The beauty about it is that we keep it indoors. You know, we are in a country where the political polarization is unacceptable in any, decent society. And so as a result of that, we don't even go in for media coverage of what it is, and we don't actually publish our reports and findings. We try and invite those involved stakeholders to point it out so that corrective measures can be taken and so on. And that is why the public might not have heard of what is going on. And sometimes it's not the fault of the management themselves, but they have challenges that they have difficulty addressing.
Without going into specifics and mentioning specific organizations and so on, what are some of the things that you have found which are most troubling?
You know, our financial management system within the public sector, from our experiences, hasn't been all that, welcoming, for the lack of a better word. They've not been exciting to us. There are many questions, and especially for those of us coming from the private sector. I mean, we see things that will not be acceptable or tolerated, but it happens within the public sector. And when we see those ones, we bring them out. Although a lot of the time it has, political interferences and so on from their sector ministries and the rest of it. So it complicates matters. And if we're able to divulge, professionalism from our politics or the political interference, then we'll be, moving forward. But that is going to be a tall order from the way we do things, in the country. But if we don't do that, then I don't think we're going to improve on, our financial management, and as a result, effective utilization of our resources.
We have invested a lot of money in training very skilled personnel, high-level management personnel, top accountants, and so on. Why can't they be professional?
A few times in my own experience, when I meet colleagues and, bring some of these issues out, those within the public sector, comments like, from where you are sitting, you can afford to, say what you are saying, or you can afford to, criticize. But I still have school-going children, and, I've got to be careful. So you realize that it's the fear. And if I were to analyze them, I'll say that we've extended our political, appointees to, state organization executives. It's become part of the spoils of political destiny. So we might not necessarily be placing the right persons or qualified individuals at certain state institutions. And then it cascades down, and as a result, if you don't get good results, it becomes difficult. The person could be professionally qualified, but it depends on the person's also principles and, how fearful and, so on. Maybe he lacks that independence because he wants to protect.
But that's what professionalism is about. Professionalism is about doing the right thing in spite of the pressures, in spite of the fears, and so on. Isn't
yes,
that
I mean, I'm really reluctant to say that we have professionals and we have professionals. I mean, there are those who come out with the qualifications and so on. You are supposed to uphold the independence. Maybe that is why some of us run away to the private sector to seek solace, because things are better organized and things are a
Couldn't
bit
it
more.
also be that the private sector is more lucrative?
Oh yes, that is, but it's part of the management of it because they even know the values and not the numbers, you know, so that is why it's lucrative. I mean, for the simple reason that, but you work for your money. I mean, the attitude and so on of a private sector executive is quite different from, you know, it's not going to be saying or giving excuses that my minister says I should do this, so I'm doing it. No. You know, there's a limit to what that, you know.
Coming back to funding of political parties.
Yes.
Why is that an issue? People form their own political parties, they are competing for power, and as you say, they get the spoils of office and so on. Why should we add the state funds that are available for expanding health infrastructure, for example, to what the politicians want to spend?
You know, we already have it in our statute books that political parties are supposed to account for, you know, by submitting returns and the rest of it. And on the news, you heard a few have submitted returns, some have not. And in fact, when we had our forum, it was explained to us by, you know, some of the reps that, you know, why do you want me to account to you? You didn't give me the money, you know, although it's in the statute books. You know for a fact that we are very short on implementation. We don't execute the laws. I think we have sufficient laws, and there's a joke that we have more laws than US and UK combined. But when it comes to implementation, ours starts from the bottom. You know, we are averse to implementing our rules and laws and so on and so forth. So as a result of that, you know, it leaves a gap, and people capitalize on that. Now, when we look at, apart from the accountability of these resources that are expended, one area of major concern, which I think the Ghanaian, average Ghanaian should understand, is that, you know, the political party funding is very expensive. And because of the nature of our corporate world here, we tend to come up with what we call political investors. These are persons who will finance the political party through campaigns and so on. When it wins, that is the lottery, bonanza, it means, and I keep on telling a lot of Ghanaians that there is no entity in Ghana, especially a company, that is a charitable concern, which means it's financing a political party because the leaders are good looking and they are nice to be with. No, 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 no. It becomes an investment. So they've got to be repaid. That is where we have the problem. Because the repayment, you know, the risk is factored into the repayment, and it's a huge one. And then we start shouting corruption, we start shouting sole sourcing, we start shouting this, but it's part of the process.
Before we come to the corrupting influences and so on, I mean, is it right for political party leaders to say that because the state didn't give them funding, they have no obligation to account for their funds?
Well, it's part of, I think, our attitude and, you know, our outlook towards things. I mean, if we are not very law-abiding, or we are not compliant, or it's not enforced, it becomes a way of life. So it becomes more of an individualistic sort of approach to everything. And that is where we have the issues.
But political parties are public institutions, are they not?
They are public institutions, but we know for a fact, and you know it, that, you know, they are law unto themselves. I mean, it's going to be, you know, difficult. If NDC does not submit their returns, can you imagine the EC or anybody saying they are going to ban it? maybe it will be on the news that the chief executive has been fired before you even open your mouth.
But earlier this week, the Electoral Commission actually did indicate that out of 26 parties, only 7 have submitted their returns. The MPP hasn't, the NDC hasn't.
And what is it going to do about it?
I don't know.
Well, that is precisely it. You know, in the Western world, you know, they've been at this game for a long time, so granted that we are learning. But we must have passed through the crawling stage by now. I mean, in Africa, we are supposed to be one of the leading, you know, countries when it comes to democracy. And as we love saying in Ghana, young democratic dispensation, you know, and the rest of it. We tend to forget that democracy is an embodiment of so many factors. We just take our voting and that's about it. So again, the law says you should, you know, file returns. And the Electoral Commission is saying only 7. The rest have not. And these are major parties. In the Western world, the sanctions will be applied. So I think we'll have to wait. Maybe there are going to be sanctions whereby you will hear on the radio tomorrow that NPP and NDC have been suspended from operation or banned. Then we know that our laws are working. But I stand to be corrected, and I don't know whether you are that confident that is going to be the case.
But sir, if they are not complying with the law, if they are not accounting for their funds and so on, why should we give them state funds?
Maybe that is, we've asked this team, project team, to, you know, start a debate, and as I said it in my opening address, I did not want to influence their way of thinking because I want it to be, you know, general. But maybe it's also my background. As an accountant, I know that when I look at maybe some of the reports coming out of the, you know, Public Accounts Committee and the rest of it, I believe that maybe it's going to be cheaper to fund the parties and put in the appropriate measures, whereby the leaders will not feel compelled or obliged to repay back those, you know, investors, than, you know, carrying on with the status quo.
But if you give them some funds,
yes,
there's no guarantee that they will not look for more funds from those business tycoons or investors, yes, in political parties.
At least what it might do, contribute, is that because you've given them some funds, even if it's minor, they've got to account for it because it's associated with the whole and not just what was given them. So then, if our institutions are working, they can use that as basis to maybe move on these, you know, parties.
But the obligation to account for party funds is not tied to the state giving them money. The law simply says that if you collect public money, and public money is not just what is coming from state coffers,
yes,
you have to account, and they
yes,
are not accounting.
No.
And people are arguing that we should give them a lot more from the state coffers. Yes. I don't quite get it.
And that is the question they were saying. You don't give me funds, we have to go and search for our funds all the time. But if there's help from the state, to some extent, they'll be obliged to account for it. Because you've been giving state funds, you can't tell me you are going to account for that portion that was given you. So you've got to account for the whole lot. And it comes back to implementation again. Are institutions going to be that strong and independent to go after those who actually...
So instead of giving the money to the parties, why don't we strengthen the constitutional and national institutions to be able to police the parties well?
You know, we've had a lot of debate in this sector. And I keep on saying that when you look at your constitution as it stands, you know, it's going to be difficult. We have a winner-take-all, you know, type of constitution. And I believe strongly that you know, when after Jesus, the most powerful person on earth, it's not Obama, it's our president, you know, because he's got to appoint everybody. I mean, I know he's in consultation with the Council of State, who are even mostly appointed by him anyway. And he can fire anybody or make your life difficult and fund you in addition. It makes it very difficult for the institutions. I mean, if you take any of the institutions, any of them, and take the chief executive, and then there's an infringement by top hierarchy or very influential political figures, you tell me as a matter of fact, do you expect a reprimand?
The Supreme Court is independent, and its independence is guaranteed by security of tenure.
Oh, yes.
Suraj is independent. Its independence is guaranteed by security of tenure. And so
yes.
Yes.
You see, but these guys, the Suraj and so on, chief executives are normally appointed. You know, you don't have to be easily fired to feel the effect of the pressures. Mm-hmm. You are sitting in the chair. And if you are not a very strong-headed person, it's going to be very difficult. When your life is made miserable as a result of that position, you might not even be fired. You will fire yourself. And that is the issue. We are looking at the practicalities that we've seen around. And this is what makes it so difficult. You know, that maybe a winner takes all. It's been discussed so many times, including during the constitutional review. But it looks as if we are not going to be addressing that. So then we have to look at how best we can work around this particular, you know, issue.
Hello and welcome back to Hot Issues, which is sponsored by Gassam Cement, the nation's builder. And we are talking to Mr. Joe Winful, who is a former senior partner of KPMG, an accounting firm, and is also the executive chairman of the Civil Society Organization platform. And they're working on a campaign about whether or not the state should fund political parties. Now, sir, who are you working with? Who is on this project?
Oh, those on the project are really, the project guys are really Fat Africa. They initiated the project. And Fat Africa was co-founded. I'm a co-founder with Honorable Kandapa when he resigned from it. Mm-hmm. And then we have resident economists and so on who are doing the research and the rest of it and coordinating that. So, but we are actually, for this project, being funded by Star Ghana in order to, you know, undertake this research and come up with, you know, our findings, and then that will be presented to Ghanaians at large and then to the government to see whether it will become a parliamentary debate or an issue that has to be looked at. They might come back and shoot it down, that no, we can't, because there were even, you know, different views straight away at the forum, that, you know, already there's too much being spent on them. Why should we even pay more? What is the guarantee that they won't still have political investors who continue with, you know, the habits and the rest? So, and we are saying, okay, that's the essence of the national conversation. We want to hear our sides and come up with, you know, the conclusions which will enable us to move forward. We can't sit back and do nothing, because we have accepted that the current of the status quo is not beneficial to the state.
Is Justice Emile Short in any way associated with this project?
No. He's not a member of FAT Africa, and not even a civil society platform. He's with IEA, and IEA was associated with the civil society platform, which is, you know, a makeup of different civil society groups, Imani, Ghana, CDD, you know, IE and all of them, anti-corruption agency and the rest of it. So all these groups came together actually during the IMF. The concern at the time of the IMF was that, oh, we are going again to the IMF. There will be conditions. And these conditions could hurt our people. It could hurt the agricultural sector, you know, because the IMF will normally come up with their own prescriptions. And that was the major concern. Now, as you know, Oxfam, which is also a member of, you know, is more in line with protecting the poor, the pro-poor. And then you have the other organizations which, you know, are also against corruption, like anti-corruption and the rest, whose interest is to ensure that the fiscal discipline which led us into this mess is looked at and checked. So instead of each and every single civil society, you know, engaging with the IMF, and we said, no, let's come together and form a coalition. That is a platform. So we came together as a platform, and I was, you know, appointed the chairman. And then the whole idea was to start engaging with the World Bank about the conditions and looking at how best. And the IMF actually were quite elated that civil society is going to get involved with the IMF. Where we were not able to succeed fully was engaging with the government itself in order to, you know, share ideas on the best way forward. And we were encouraged when the president said this would be the last, visit to the IMF. And so we also used that and latched onto it, because initially we all had concerns about going to the IMF knowing, you know, what it's all about. But we said, okay, if what got us into this mess is the fiscal indiscipline, and by fiscal indiscipline, as you know, is a nice word for misapplication, appropriation, you know, and so on and so forth, including corruption.
Sometimes just overspending.
Yeah.
Nothing criminal, just overspending.
Well, it's unlike Brazil. You know, but it's overspending, yes,
yeah,
but not necessarily accounting for the overspend, possibly, you know, which actually resulted in where we are. Then we should make sure that we monitor this sort of fiscal indiscipline so that we don't get there again. And that is what brought about the platform getting involved with the IMF.
You don't seem to have succeeded much.
It's not easy, you know, and
because all the things that you went in to prevent are happening. I mean, prices are skyrocketing, tariffs are going up, a freeze on employment and so on. You don't seem to have succeeded at all.
You know what? At least we've been still conferring with the IMF. There's a limit to how far we can go. We've been issuing communique about areas of concern. And we've been even advocating that we need to meet with government reps in order to discuss. During the forum, we had one rep from the Ministry of Finance who came to give out a presentation on how some of these issues are being addressed and so on and so forth. But we wanted a more objective engagement with the, to see how best we can carry on. Mind you, we are in election year. We know the realities on the ground when you have election year. Also, the measures, some of the measures that need to be taken to address some of these are some are harsh and so on, which means that you need a strong political will. And in this period, you know, we know that it's going to be difficult. Even the World Bank, the IMF, sometimes becomes a bit lenient, although if you read some of their reports, they will mention areas of concern, but at the end of the day, you know, will allow a leeway because it will make things difficult. You know, so that is why. And the worst part of it is that, again, because of our political polarization, even the government becomes suspicious, you know, and so that if you want to even engage and look at things objectively, professionally, they will still at the back of their mind have certain reservations that, these, lackeys of the opposition trying to, derail our programs and so on and so forth, which is very unfortunate.
And if you were to say things positive about government, you could still have the same problem with the opposition.
Yeah,
problems of suspicions and so on.
That's right. Yeah. So that is why I'm saying the polarization. And that is why I thought maybe the EC was going to ban the two parties because for non-compliance with this thing, which will bring peace to all of us. Because they're too polarized. Everywhere we go, is NDC, NPP. It will get to a point that if you don't take care and you are sick, and you get to the hospital, the doctor will have to ask you which party you belong to, and will betide you if you choose the opposing party. Then you are as good as dead. And that is what we should check.
So have you found out in any way how political parties make their money now?
Now,
what are the sources of funding?
I think some individual politicians come in with their own funds. Some also, get funded by businesses and so on. And even we believe strongly that some funding comes from outside, which is contrary to our constitution.
There are also some suggestions that even drug money has found its way into our politics.
That is what is one of the areas that we have greater concerns, which has been pushing us to, because if you get the criminals funding political parties, it becomes very difficult. And it was mentioned at the forum, and there's a lot of concern. Because if we do that, then we are actually mortgaging the whole country.
So how can we overcome that problem if it exists? Right now it's at the level of rumor and speculation.
Yes.
But if it truly exists, that criminal funds are finding their way into our politics, how do you cure that? Will state funding cure that?
No, but state funding with well-equipped and staffed institutions that are to implement and ensure compliance with the laws and returns, because the returns have got to indicate sources of these funds, which will have to be audited, and then how they are spent and how they come in. So we'll know that, Kwesi brought in this. What does Kwesi do? And it was spent for, on billboards, costing so much, what have you. Because those state institutions are empowered, and then the parties themselves know that they've got to account because they have some funds from the state. And it will be up to, again, the auditors and all the institutions that have to ensure this implementation.
Now, where is the state going to find the money to give political parties?
Well,
because already we have a huge deficit, as you say.
Yes.
Already, about 60 to 65% of national revenue is paying the remuneration of only 600,000 workers. So how are we going to find money to give to political parties?
It's worse than that when you add the debt service cost. Yes, we are left with, I don't know whether 18% or something to. Yes, it's.
So if all we have is 18% of state revenue.
Yeah.
To fund development.
Or 28 or whatever it is.
Okay, to fund development.
Yes.
Where are we going to find the money to give to political parties? Fantastic. So where are we going to find the money to give to political parties?
I don't want to preempt the thinking of the group, but they could explore so many ways. There could be a fund set up, political party funding set up. Like we came up with the, NHIS or whatever it is. Or we could have identified corporations or companies, that are supposed to give some contributions, limited contributions, into a fund that will be distributed and so on. But it depends. Those will all be worked out in the mechanisms.
Two difficulties, two clear difficulties. If you're going to set up a fund like the NHIS fund or whatever, GET fund or whatever, it means you're going to tax the people more.
Not necessarily.
So where are the funds going to come from?
Are not very efficient. If we can improve on them. Secondly, I can assure you as an accountant that when I look at the waste and the misapplications and so on, I can bet you it's more than whatever funds that could be used in funding.
So are you saying that we'll find ways of minimizing the waste or eradicating the waste and give that money to the political parties?
Not necessarily give that money, but which will improve the revenue mobilization or generation of the government, allowing it to have adequate funds with some that could be allocated this.
But sir, you know, over the last 30 years, every year, we get the same report from the Auditor General. Nothing has changed much.
Yes.
If we haven't been able to do it over the last 30 years, where is the guarantee that we can do it now and pass the money on to political parties?
You know, I'll answer that with a question. If you were a political leader and I am funding you a lot and I come for a contract, source, and that is part of the damage I'm doing to Ghana Water, electricity, or whatever it is, overpricing it 4 or 5 times. And then people start shouting. The Auditor General comes up and says, no, retrieve the money from the guy. You think the government will have the guts to do that?
So how do you correct this situation? What is it that is going to correct this situation to free funds that we can give to political parties?
Well, this is what we are saying, that at least it will come to the fore because of the returns being accurate, that this is this position, you know. So we can then go into, and even the security agencies can start investigating a lot of contributors who are putting so much money in it, and you can easily relate that to contracts that are going on. At least it will give you an insight into areas that you've got to focus on. You made
a very important point that the corporate world is not made up of Father Christmases.
No.
And that they put money in political parties in order to reap benefits.
Yes.
Do you think that this corporate world will put money into a fund to be distributed by the state into political parties? Given the fact that they are not philanthropists.
Yes. They might not like that. But it will be part of the incentives for them to doing business in Ghana. That, oh, we are helping to build
But if you put money into such a fund,
yes,
which goes to PNC, goes to CPP, goes to PPP, goes to NPP, you understand? It doesn't go to NPP leaders, doesn't go to NDC leaders and so on. You cannot reap your benefits. How do you reap your benefits?
But then it brings about a level playing field for all the corporations.
That is already, if it will happen the way you prescribe.
Yes. So it means that we have to sit back and find out how best do we let it happen that way. Because many a time we don't put too much thinking into coming up with our, implementation of our strategies. It becomes an idea and is tested and that's it. When it fails, nobody. But if we put effort and serious thinking into that, we might find ways. We might not have it right the first time, and there could be flaws, but we'll keep on improving on it until it's the same. Because
what would be the incentive for any company to put money into such a fund? What would be the incentive?
Companies at the moment, and I can assure you that worldwide companies are becoming aware of their social responsibility. And it's not this corporate social responsibility, but real communities. You know, if you look at the origination of the sustainable millennium goals rather than development millennium goals, is the sustainable means that even our development should be sustainable and it should be sustained. Most companies are now looking to be sustainable over the years. If you look at our country here, you will realize that indigenous companies, name me 2 or 3 that have survived 2 generations or 1 generation.
Well, I wouldn't attempt to do that. Yeah.
Yes, you will see that, you know, it comes on and they all collapse. It's like one-man business, my father's business, that sort of thing. We don't improve on it. We don't build on it. We don't grow them, you know, and that has been the problem with us. So a lot of our indigenous companies are not even looking at the communities in which they operate to help them improve. They've forgotten their workers live in that community. They've forgotten that the children of the workers will drink from that pool, which is not safe. And that when the children are sick, they will be absent taking the kids to the clinic. You know, it's so that they are becoming aware of ensuring that they wake up to their responsibilities. And that is the more reason why if they are in Ghana and they have to contribute to make the democracy work, which will mean that their companies will be operating in a sound and conducive environment, then they will do that.
Hello and welcome back to Hot Issues, which is sponsored by Gassam Cement, the nation's builder. And we are looking at the possibility of state funding of political parties and all the issues that are connected thereto. And we are privileged to have with us in the studio Mr. Joe Winful, a very, very accomplished accountant. He used to be senior partner of the KPMG and is also the executive chairman of the civil society organization Platform, which is behind the organization of this debate. Now, sir, don't you think that our politics is becoming too expensive? 275 members of parliament, look at their salary. The executive, almost 80 ministers, and so on. And now, we have to fund the political parties in addition to all this. Is our politics not getting too expensive?
You know, these are what makes one to sometimes question the whole essence of our borrowed, I call it borrowed democracy, because it's Western style democracy that we've borrowed without looking at how well it fits into our environment, culture, and so on. Again, I take it that, you know, majority of Ghanaians say that is what they want, so it's been. Now, it's always said that democracy is expensive. Maybe that is it. Maybe we should have looked at, you know, a more, you know, conducive or applicable means of our type of democracy, which might be, you know, more in line with Ghanaian culture than, you know, this imported one. I don't know. Even the US is crying about size of government. When I look at it, I sometimes compare it to the government of the Netherlands and so on and the rest of them. And I'm saying the size of our ministers, size of DCs, you know, parliamentarians. I mean, we kept on adding. Maybe if we want to be very, very serious, maybe we don't need more than 100 or 120 parliamentarians. Maybe if it comes to ministers, we don't need more than 12. Because the size of the economy is so small.
Proper that every 4 years you have a committee to review the conditions of service of so-called Article 71 office holders, and we always increase their salaries and allowances? Is it proper? Is that how a state should run?
Well, you know, the question is, have they earned it? I don't know. You know, if these guys had targets of achievement and you could quantify their productivity and how well they've performed, I'll be the first to say double it. Because what they are giving you in return would be maybe more than 10 times what you are spending on them.
But what about the private security person who's earning 120 cedis a month? Shouldn't there be some correlation between what politicians earn and what ordinary people earn?
You see, again, that's what I'm saying, that, and we've heard it many a time. I mean, and I'm sure you've heard it so many times, that it is said that people go into politics to make money. So we have turned our politics into a money-making machine, if that is the case. Then the question is that what Ghanaians want? Because the parliamentarian will tell you that as soon as he wins, he is being bombarded with school fees, outdooring, this and that, so he needs all the extras in order to pay for.
Now, one parliamentarian has said that you need a minimum of 500,000 Ghana cedis to contest the election, minimum. Meanwhile, the pay of the parliamentarian for the 4-year period is under 400,000.
So where do they get the money from?
Have you looked at it?
A colleague, you know, jokingly said, do you know how we end up with some parliamentarian? I said, no, I don't know. He said, well, if you get tired of driving a taxi in New York or London, and then you hear that they said, oh, there's democracy in Ghana. If you go, you become rich. Just try and be a deputy minister. So they sell their house, sell the car, maybe end up with $200,000. He comes down, and then you've got to choose the constituency. And if you are NPP inclined, you choose Ashanti region or Eastern region. And if you are NDC inclined, you choose Volta or some safe location. Then you buy the delegates. You buy 2/3 of the delegates. Make it worth their while. It means that you are straight going to parliament because it's a stronghold. And then when you get there, you use the next, this costs you 100,000, you use another 50,000 to support the presidential candidate. And then when he wins, you are assured of deputy minister or something. Then you wait 6 months, and then after that you have to start recouping all your funds. And also stack some for the next election. So you know you have your target of $2 or $4 million to make. So you get to work. So forget the assignment that you've been given. Have you forgotten there was one lady who said it was the driver that came out with it, that while she was looking for $1 million, and then that's it, and so on. So maybe that is what we have.
But if we accept this, and move on to the extent of saying that let's give them even more money, why then do we complain about corruption?
That is, it's like trying to see how best we can minimize the damage that we are facing.
But we don't minimize the damage by giving them more money.
Yes, but because you want to hold them accountable somehow, partially accountable. And it's better than none at all. And that is what you had.
You're welcome. Thank you very much for coming to the studio. Thank you very, very much. Well, this has been Hot Issues, and we've been having a conversation about the state funding of political parties and the debate which is being organized, you know, and is going to go to all parts of the country. We're going to determine whether indeed it will be proper to hand over state resources to the political parties for their campaign. Well, this has been Hot Issue.